So, we've been on this journey for, I say almost 10 years almost since I've known you.
10 years together, 11, yeah.
Yeah. So, during this time, we've come across a lot of different information, right? Like trying to figure out what's the right strategy and how
Like
best
for
to manage our
personal
money
finance?
for personal finances.
Mhm.
Exactly. What do you think are some ideas that we came across that we thought were correct during this time, but then we learned after doing having an experience that it really didn't work out for our situation?
I think there were some that are just downright false, right? But then there were others where like it worked for us during a certain time period, but then as we progressed on, it didn't really make sense for our situation. As our situation evolved, it didn't make sense.
Okay.
So I don't view it all as black and white, right or wrong. Most of it made sense for a given time period and where we were at the time. Like the number one thing when you were asking the question that popped in my head was, all debt is bad debt.
Yeah.
Remember
We were
like,
on that tip for a long time.
Right.
I feel like that was only recent where we kind of changed our mind about that.
Exactly. That's why it was at the top of my mind when you were asking the question. I was like, I remember where we didn't budge on that philosophy, the debt-free philosophy. Like, get debt-free. It didn't matter what it was. We didn't want to carry debt or owe anyone money. It didn't make any sense to pay interest on borrowed money when you could just save up the money to buy it or cash flow it.
Yeah.
Now, like, recently we sat and we saw our mortgage after buying this home, and when we were going into it and calculating, remember we were like on the plan to pay off the mortgage as quickly as possible. And when we started looking at the numbers and how low the mortgage
was actually costing us, like the interest and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it even makes more sense now that inflation has kind of went on this rampant rise, because the amount that we borrowed at, the interest rate is way lower
Than the
what
inflation rate.
Well, what the loans are they handing out now, anyways.
That's right.
And that's just like a matter of a year ago, which is crazy to think about.
That's right.
But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense from a debt situation where if you leverage the debt wisely, I think there's a lot you can do with the remaining money that you're not necessarily socking into whatever asset that you're trying to pay down.
And that's a good point, that caveat, if you are wise, right? Because
For sure.
everybody knows personally what their vices are. So we're talking about mortgage interest rate versus the inflation rate and what you're making back in the market, not in the last 6 months or so, but what you could potentially make in the market with that extra money that you're throwing at the mortgage.
Yeah.
Well, if you know your vice is this, I'm not going to put any extra dollars towards a mortgage because the interest I'm paying is so much lower than what I can make in the market. Well, you still got to put the money in the market, right?
That's right.
So if you have like a vice where it's like you can't trust yourself to take that extra money that you would have been throwing at the mortgage and put it in the market, and instead you buying
Cars,
things that depreciate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then it's, even though the math makes sense, psychologically for you personally that you won't follow through with the whole plan. You shouldn't do it.
Well, yeah, and I
You
think
shouldn't do it at all.
that's a benefit of at least when you pay down debt, if whatever interest rate you're paying, paying down towards, you're getting that kind of back, right?
That's right.
Like
It's a
you're
guarantee.
not. Yeah, that's a guarantee. As
Guarantee.
opposed to with the market, there's so much uncertainty. You don't know whether or not you're gonna get. Now, likely because of the historical returns, you're gonna get more than what you're gonna get paying down that debt. But there's still that psychological barrier you have to overcome.
Yeah.
And understanding that, okay, well, if I put this money down on this mortgage and I'm paying, 5% interest or 3% interest, at least that's going to be less amount that I'm going to have to pay in the future because I paid that principal down on it.
Yeah, and then you don't know what the future holds too, right?
That's
the
true.
other piece. Like, God willing, you and I will be healthy and able to continue to work and
That's
pay the
true.
mortgage. But some people like the peace of mind of knowing, like, one, if something happened to me, at least has one less bill that I have to worry about.
That's true.
Although there's always property taxes. But then two, there's freedom in being debt free.
Absolutely.
Beyond just owing someone money.
Absolutely.
think about all the decisions we were able to make during the time we were debt free when we paid off that last mortgage.
Yeah.
It was like when people presented me low ball offers, or even your job, if they presented you with a low ball offer, you
could be like, I'm a walk
you
because
can walk. That's so
I don't necessarily need this money to pay.
free.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so free.
It is. It is. I'll tell you, one of the things that I guess that I learned over time was that in order to make like real money working for someone else, you have to change jobs. Like, remember how,
yes.
I used to think I was
myth.
going to be a company man. I used to be like, all right, well, if I stay at the same company and I work there for, 15, 20 years, I'll eventually get to like a 6-figure salary.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's when 6 figures was like the number.
That was, well, right. That's when that was the number. But yeah, I mean, that was just a huge myth to me because I really don't think I started, becoming like a high income earner until I actually started bouncing between opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's not necessarily the employers that I work for didn't recognize my potential, but I just think they put you in like a cap.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they start limiting the maximum amount you can make. So even if you do overproduce and exceed all these goals, right, your cap is still set for them because whatever you came in at, that's kind of like they're just trying to give you just enough to kind of keep you there year after year. And honestly, I learned that from you, right? Because like you had really, when I first met you and we were spring chickens, I mean, like for me, I didn't think you had really any fear about like the whole thing of finding another job. And I guess I wasn't confident enough in my ability at the time to think that my skill set was valuable enough or marketable enough that if I did leave the current employer that I was at, that someone else would pick it up. And not will someone else only pick it up, but be willing to pay what I was making at that time.
I don't know if it was lack of confidence. I think it was more so the unknown, unaware of the unknown. It was like, and it was a little bit of you kind of trusted your employer to like do right by you.
Of course.
And
that's what I saw my parents do.
Exactly. And I mirror that to how you describe your parents. And for me, it was never like, my first job, I got laid off. It was
that's true.
It was 2008.
That's true.
So there was no sense of loyalty. And I didn't feel any type of way about the job. I was just like, I understand. Y'all not making the revenue you should be making. Like, you got to cut people. I get it. So there was no hard feelings either way. But I quickly learned with my first job, I was like, okay, it's just a numbers game.
So you felt like it was business.
Oh, it's all business both ways. I didn't feel any type of way when I got laid off. And granted, I don't have kids or a family. That's probably why I didn't feel any type of way too. But it's all business. But that shaped my frame of mind, and that's a huge myth that the generations that created us held for so long. Because back then, pensions existed. Oh my gosh, how amazing!
But then also the benefits, right? Beyond just the retirement benefit of a pension, but like the healthcare was different. Like I mean, like I remember growing up and with my dad's healthcare plan, like we didn't have to pay for anything. Our copay was zero. Our prescriptions were zero, and that was the norm. Like I think most people who had healthcare at that time, healthcare insurance, they just had benefits that allotted them to, basically go to the doctor whenever they wanted to and not really have to worry about the cost incurred. Mm-hmm. Now, it's like, if I ever want to go to the doctor just to be like, hey, I got a cough, it's like $20 off tops. Mm-hmm. And that don't include the prescriptions. That don't include, any referrals that we have to go to. Right, that's just going to just see my normal provider. Right. So I think it was a different time where, and I'm not one of them all corporations are bad people, but I just do think that, over time, corporations started trying to figure out, okay, how can I get the most profit as opposed to, like you said, it comes down to a business
Exactly.
decision.
We live in a capitalistic society.
That's right.
That's just how it operates.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's just like recognizing it and then seeing where you fit in it all and what your aspirations are helps. If you can realize that as quickly as possible to kind of see where you can navigate in the whole macro scheme of things.
Yeah.
So that's a huge myth that I won't say that our generation carried necessarily, but it's definitely one that you saw our parents kind of sort of carry
Sure.
with them about, the company taking
care of their employees and making sure that,
Exactly.
I mean, and I think another part of it too is like, I don't think many employees get to really own the part of company that they work for.
Right,
I
right.
mean, well, I take that back because,
Stocks.
my dad had a lot of stock, but the
Yeah,
company
but
ended
talk
up
about
going down.
people who own Enron.
Well, I was
How
gonna
they
say my
feel
dad
right now.
owned Nortel, and
Exactly.
that we all know how that
Exactly.
went.
Ownership, schmonership.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess, and I guess a lot of the onus is now starting to come back on the people, right?
Yes.
We can no longer depend on someone else to take care of us. We have to come up with our own plans. We got to come up with our
Create
own
our
financial strategy.
retirement plan.
Yeah, and we just got to take ownership. And I think that's a hard part for some people to want to accept, because a lot of times it was just easier. For one, there was one less thing you got to think about to say, okay, how am I going to manage it once I finish work?
Yeah.
Where am I going to get all this income from? And before, you just had a company that was saying, up,
Here's
we're
your
going to
pension,
guarantee,
we'll manage
we'll make
it,
sure you
yeah.
got 80% of what you made.
Yeah.
Have a great life. So
Uh-huh.
it puts some more onus on the people to kind of figure out and take responsibility, really, for
Which
what
is
it
a
is.
lot, because there's a lot to navigate with 401ks. Like, I remember I had this one 401k was like, we'll pay 5% up to 2%, and then but 8% if you do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. And I was like, what? I'm so confused.
I was gonna stank your leg on it, but I couldn't.
Exactly.
couldn't
Like,
do it.
somebody explain this to me. It just
Sure.
doesn't make sense half the time. And sometimes I feel like y'all doing this on purpose.
I do, but no, but that's the thing, and I think that's one of the, I think another myth, right, is that finances are hard. But I think it's just because, or not finances, well, personal finances is hard, retirement is hard, but I think it's just because they use a lot of convoluted terms, and they don't break it down into like a simple, just in layman's terms.
Yeah,
right?
it's all legalese.
Like, why does it got to be 5% of X amount of dollars?
8%,
And I get everybody makes something different, but they should be able to make like a calculator that says, hey, if you contribute X amount of dollars, this is how much we're going to contribute every year.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I guess as a society, and maybe this is probably one of those things where it's like a barrier to entry in order for you to actually take a part of this concept of the American dream. But I don't think it needs to be that hard. And I think a lot of apps coming out today, like there's plenty of financial apps that are kind of simplifying that process now.
Yeah.
But before,
But it
like,
wasn't always there.
Yeah, when I used to talk to my dad and my mom about that stuff, I mean, they were just kind of like hands off. They're like, well, I got it invested and that's it. And I'm like, no, I guess I wasn't going to be afforded that same luxury.
Yeah.
Like, I had to get to a place of, I have to learn and understand exactly what's happening to my money, because if I don't, could have another Nortel situation or
Exactly, Enron situation, whatever
Absolutely.
it is. Yeah,
So-
for sure. I think there's some myths from a personal finance perspective that just evolved over time for us. I wouldn't call them myths. I would just say it made sense back then. It doesn't make sense now. But then there's some, I don't care on what galaxy or planet you're on, it does not make sense. Like, two things. One is, I remember my niece calling me, and I don't know how we got into this conversation, but she was telling me she was holding a balance on her credit card every single month so that she could improve her credit score. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
where did you get that from? Like, who
Yeah.
told? She said somebody told her that. And then I heard it recently. Someone else said the same thing, and I was like, if you hold a balance on your account, that
doesn't work.
That's not what it
They-
tells the
yeah.
creditors at all.
Yeah.
The second piece was credit in general. I started to look at it differently when I joined a lot of credit card hacking groups, because I kind of wanted to get a sense of, which is very dangerous if you don't have the discipline and the habits in place not to overspend.
Sure.
But because you're trying to play the numbers game here. It's like being at the casino and thinking you're gonna beat the
You gonna beat the house?
Exactly.
The
So
house
if you don't have the
always wins.
discipline
Sure.
and the healthy habits in place, you can't really play with credit cards and rewards and such.
Yeah.
But I also learned, like, even with that, you have to be, I don't know, super careful about spending
Yeah.
and then earning those rewards. Like,
Well, and there's a lot of, sometimes they put the little like the small text on it where they say, if you miss a payment within the first 6 months, then that kind of negates all the rewards that you had.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Oh man, you need to read the small print.
Yeah, I
read the
didn't know
fine
that.
print, because they do have, and they mention that, and I know, like, I'm big on using my Costco card so I can get that certificate at the end of the year. But I'm pretty sure, like, if you read a lot of that fine print, like, you have to have that credit card in good standing. Like, you can't have missed payments. Now, as long as you hit the minimum payment, I think you're still in good standing.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they want you to only pay that minimum payment because they're going to charge you the interest over.
And it should outweigh the reward.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I got to a place where even with credit, like, I finally looked at credit for what it is. In my opinion, what it is the ability for you to earn credit from a bank or from wherever.
Sure.
But if I don't have any intentions on
buying
opening up a mortgage, a personal loan, or anything along those lines, I was like, I can really make credit work for me. Like, I knew I was going on a big trip, and I opened up a credit card.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm just going to open this credit card because I think they were giving $1,000 if you spent $4,000 in the first 3 months. And I was like, I spend that on my bills.
Wow.
So it's just like, it's myths, I think, were created because in the grand scheme of things, they do work for the majority of the population. So I don't know if it's a myth necessarily, or if it's like a
designed,
not a design, but it matters and it works for you in a given period, in a given situation. For me, that myth worked for me before I had the habits and the spending behaviors in place in order to work the system.
I got you.
I didn't have it in place back then, so that rule worked. Now it's like, give me my $1,000 because I needed to pay those bills anyway.
Yeah.
But for some people, that's dangerous.
Absolutely.
That's really dangerous.
Really dangerous.
I have a fun question for you. So, but I want you to take yourself back to college or early post-college. So you got to fill in the blank here, all right? I used to think in order to become a millionaire, I needed to do what?
I'd say that's a good one. There was a lot of things I thought back then.
What's the first thing that popped in your head?
Be a business owner.
Really?
I thought that I needed to, the only way for me to get to millionaire status was through a path of entrepreneurship. And I thought that, because I mean, like, realistically, the people in my family who had the most money, they owned a business. Like Uncle Booch. Uncle Booch had the lawn maintenance, business. And, from what I could tell, he probably was the wealthiest out of all of our family. So, I was under the impression that, I would need to kind of take whatever skill set I had and make a business out of it. But I one thing I've learned about that, and which was, I guess it contributes to the myth for me, is that I love what I do. Like, I love working on computers and I love helping people and stuff like that. I do not like running a business. I am just not a person who wants to, handle all of the extra that comes with running a business. So I think that was the biggest myth for me. Now, fortunately, I work in an industry where, there's a lot of high income,
Sales,
just because of the skill
commission.
set. Well, yeah, but even IT, right?
Oh, right.
IT is, you can go sales in some other industries and they still don't, command that same kind of salary. So I've been very fortunate in that regard, but I did not know prior to meeting you how lucrative this industry could be. And part of it was, when I referred to earlier about not staying at the same job, like going between, different companies.
How you can get that income
How you can
boost?
get it's like getting a raise every single time.
Yeah.
But it's more than a raise, really. It's, you're really starting to change your class a little bit every time. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Is just, entrepreneurship. And the thing is, and I think this is taught, especially in our community, the Black community, whereas, everyone's like, well, you got to get out there. You got to hustle. You got to kind of create your own. You got to own your own, which I am all for. I definitely think you got to own your own. But I do think that you can get to a place of owning your own after you've made enough money doing it is, working for someone else. And some of the times too, you have to learn what it is that is marketable or learn what it is that you can sell of yourself. So, mine is my IT skill set before you can even take that and start a business to try to do that with someone else. So, and that's one of the things I've always toyed around with. I was like, well, maybe if I get to a place of, I'm kind of made enough money working for someone else, maybe I'll take that same skill set and start a business on my own. But right now, I'm compensated very well for what I do, and it takes a lot of the headaches that goes from owning a business.
Running your own business.
Absolutely.
Finding your own clients. Hiring the right people. That's right.
Paying the taxes, because there's a whole different tax game once you run your own business. So, and again, there's plenty of people who have gotten to wealth by running their own business. And by, when I say running your own business, like, I don't consider things like real estate, even though that is running your own business. That's, to me, more passive. I'm talking about like brick and mortar shops.
When you say real estate, though, like landlord?
Oh, landlord.
Yeah,
right. Just being like a landlord. But, I'm not talking about like, people who have
a shop,
brick and mortar, or even if they run things out of their house, but maybe like shipping stuff on Etsy or something like that. Like, that's a grind, and I can appreciate that. That's just not for me.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you said that was your fill in the blank, because for me, the first thing that popped in my head was the lotto. Come on, I was like, that's the biggest way to get.
Wow.
No, but I've seen, and I've told you this before. Like, when I grew up, everybody plays the lotto. It wasn't like this thing you do, like we do sometimes when it gets really big and it's just fun to dream.
Yeah.
It was more like, it was like every week, that's what you did. You play the lotto. So when I thought about Millionaires, I was like, oh, for my people, the people around me, that's how we hit millionaire status, is winning the lotto. And then I learned very early on, it's not that I have bad luck, I just don't have luck, period.
What do you mean by that?
I was always the kid, like in class, they played bingo, and it was designed for every little toddler to win. I'd be the toddler that wouldn't win bingo.
Man.
I just didn't have any luck, and I remember, I'll never forget it, complaining to my dad about it, because there was this girl, his summer camp.
Wow.
She absorbed all, you see how I'm
I see you,
I'm
your
traumatized by it,
demeanor
right?
is just...
She would always win these things. And I remember I was just furious. I must have been like 6, but I was furious. And my dad telling me, get over it. He said, luck, and I don't know how much he believed it versus telling me this. He said, God designed luck for dumb people. They need it to survive. I was like,
that's an interesting way of looking at it.
And he was like, you're smart. That means you have to make your own luck. And I never forgot it.
Wow.
I never forgot it. And it's a terrible thing to say, but I took from it what I needed to take from it, which was, I'm not going to sit around and wait for Lady Luck to show up for me. Like, I'm going to go make it. I didn't even know until that moment that you can make luck. That was exciting to me. He knew what to say. He knew the types of things to say to me. So when he said that, I said, yeah, I'm going to go make my luck. So when I fill in that blank, after that critical moment in my life where he said that to me, I fill in that blank and I say, in order to get to millionaire status, you need to do the work. There's no lotto. There's no Lady Luck showing up to your door like Egg McMahon with a big paper check.
Yeah.
It's like
Publishers Clearinghouse.
Exactly. Do the work.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Like, I've never heard someone say you need to make your own luck. Whenever I've asked about luck or I've talked to people about luck, the explanation I get is luck equals where preparedness meets opportunity. So it's like the opportunity is going to come, but you need to have the work already laid out beforehand. So when that opportunity shows up, you're ready. Because a lot of times, I think people will probably get the opportunity, but they're just not ready for it.
Right.
And then it looks like someone else got lucky because they might be able to take, but you ain't see all the preparedness
that prepared them for that moment.
That's right. That's right. And I think about that sometimes with our situation too, because, like, I feel like we're at a different stage from, like, we were at the grind stage for, like, God, I feel like that was the longest stage of our life where we were
Maybe
grinding
7
and
years.
grinding and grinding. And, you know, a potential myth out of that was that, you know, people look at potentially what we post on social media or what anyone posts on social media, and it just looks like it was just an instant that happened, right? But that's why I go back and I say, like, sometimes I wish when we initially started our financial journey, we started documenting it at that point
So they could see.
so people could see kind of like the evolution of what happened to get from point A to where we are right now. And I won't say that we at the final point or the end point of where we need to be or where we want to be, but we're just at a different stage than where we were when we first began.
We're definitely at the stage where we're creating our own opportunities.
Yeah, I would say that.
Which is I'm super grateful for.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that, you know, I think going back to that kind of like myth motif is that a lot of times people feel like, okay, if I go to a 4-year college or if I go in and, you know, work at a place for X amount of years, then like
This
it's
is
almost
just going to happen.
it's,
This is
it's almost entitled, right?
Yeah.
Like it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things where going back to what you were saying is it's not going to automatically happen, right? You have to go in and you have to kind of make your own luck in that sense. And I think it's a combination of what we're saying because, you know, going to school, working for somebody, yeah, that's the prepared part, right? That's where you got to get it. But while you're there, you still have to, I'll say even like execute at a very high level. Like I look at a lot of the success that I've had, and that's because, you know, I've really strived to be the absolute best at what I do, right? Like I see other people, I see competitive, you know, I'm not really competitive, but when I see someone else doing better than me, I always go back to what my mom used to say is like, look, you're not better than anyone else, but you're just as good as everyone else. So I always go back to that and be like, all right, if I see someone else doing X, well, all right, well, I should be able to do X too. But I do know where my strengths are and I know where my weaknesses are. On your hand, you know, I really don't feel like, to me, knowing you, I don't even think there's anything that you don't feel like you cannot do.
You're right.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
You're right.
You know.
But I'll say I know that there's certain things that I think I can do it all, but I know it's not efficient and it nor does it make sense for me to try. I don't think I was always aware of that. I think I was always like, I got it, I'll do it, I got it. And now it's like, I got that, but you could probably do it better, so I'm just going to pay you to do it because it makes more sense financially. Like, if the numbers don't add up, then it don't make sense. And I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So I think I got to that place, but that's a place of privilege, right? Because you can offset the work with money. And it takes a lot of grinding. It took a lot of years of me doing, I got it, I can do it. It took years. That was important. That period was important. But what was more important is once I realized I got to the place where I could offload it, that I did that. Some people are still out there doing, I got it, I can do it, without stopping and saying, does this make sense for me to do?
And do you think that's a myth, though? The myth is you have to be the one that does absolutely everything.
That's
because a
big
lot
one.
of times, especially with business owners, right? They
Business
say,
owners.
oh, in the first, you know, you got to bootstrap and you got to do everything yourself and you got to make sure you're looking at the books and you got to make sure you're doing the selling. You got to make sure you're delivering it. And it's just like, all right, is that really what's necessary?
And I'll say something else
succeed?
more controversial. It's even worse with a woman.
Ooh.
Now you add everything you just said.
Wow.
And on top of that, she got to come home. She got to be the cook.
Oh, true.
You don't cook? What kind of woman are you? You don't cook
Ooh.
for your kids? You don't clean? What kind of woman are you? Oh, it make me a better woman to shove my hand in the toilet and be scrubbing in the toilet as opposed to sitting down and spending time with my kids and reading a book and hiring somebody to do that. That makes me a better woman. I don't understand that whole concept.
You know, I mean, I ain't gonna bring up no recent post or anything like that, but it was a talk about, you know, being the boss bee versus being like, you know,
was it men-led conversation?
It was a men-led. We talked about it.
Course. Go ahead.
It's your favorite player. But anyways, you know, like, is it? So let's unpack that a little bit. Like, is it a myth that a woman has to do absolutely everything. In order for her to get recognized as being a good woman, that she have to be able to work at home, that she have to be able to take care of the kids, and she have to supposed to be able to cater to her man. Like to you, right? Understanding kind of the how you are and how you feel today versus what society has said you should feel and how you should be today. How do you either confirm or dispel those ideals around what a woman needs to do?
I think there's a social construct that was created that deems a woman less worthy if she cannot maintain the household.
Okay.
And by maintain child rearing, cleaning, and cooking. Now, do I think it was worse in the 40s and the 50s than it is now? I can't even argue and say that.
Oh, wow.
Because in the 40s and in the 50s, women weren't really pushed necessarily to go out and to work.
True.
Now it's like, you gotta work. Oh, you are bad. You got your own this, you got your own that, and you take care of the kids, and it's like, sure, if you can do it all, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and keep your happiness and your peace.
Yeah.
That's amazing. But what's your dude doing? Like, I really want to know. What's he doing?
Well, I mean, and we're at a place right now where it's almost impossible for a single family household making
to
like
operate
normal
off of one income.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost impossible. So,
but if we acknowledge that, why are we not acknowledging? Okay, for a number of reasons, it's sad that you need two incomes in order to operate.
Yeah.
But then why is the stress and the pressures of a woman to do it all still there? If she now has to go to work in order to maintain, why isn't it extra pressure or expectations on men to pick up a lot of that work that was traditionally done by women? And then when a man does it, this is the worst part. When a man does it, it goes viral. He did his daughter's hair. What? I just wrangled that little beast earlier, trying to rush and comb her hair. It's so sweet when you guys take your kids out on a stroll. You're such a good dad.
Well, you know.
It's just like, it's ridiculous.
I mean, I get exactly what you're saying.
You know?
I definitely think, like, if you saw a woman taking her children out on a stroller,
Nothing special.
it's just kind of like that's what she's supposed to do. If you see a man doing it, like I think we are shifting a little bit more where it's like more socially acceptable, because I think a lot of times I watch these TVs and they're like, oh, if you need, no, they're not real men today because your man's too busy baking in the kitchen rather than out there forging some
seen
iron.
that.
Oh, it's like them testosterone commercials. The testosterone commercials where they like, here, get your total T, like it's those commercials. But there's still like a population of people who have some level of influence or power that still want to portray that kind of old way of thinking. Are you
speaking about the U.S. Congress?
No, well, I wouldn't specifically referring to them.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, like, there's still people who have that kind of old way of thinking, and they're going to use their platform to kind of portray that message.
Keep pushing that message out.
So, but I mean, I completely agree with you. Like, I grew up in a household where I felt like, my dad took a lot of the responsibilities for a traditional household. Like, he was the primary cook, especially at home.
So it was non-traditional that he picked up the traditional roles of a woman for the most part. The cooking and the cleaning.
Well, I wouldn't say he cleaned. I mean, he washed dishes and stuff. But I mean, like, my parents did a good job splitting responsibility.
Oh, okay.
Right? So I saw that balance, and that's why I never really came into our relationships feeling like, oh, well, you have to do the cleaning or you have to do the cooking.
Yeah.
Like, I always felt like, well, I saw my dad, he cooked no problem. He made sure we had food on the table. He made sure our dishes were clean. If he needed to do laundry, he did laundry. It wasn't a big deal. So I never had, but I know some people have that mindset, like, no, I go to work, I make the majority of the money, so when I get home, like, that's it.
And frankly, I don't think it matters who does what. Just do what works for your relationship.
Oh, sure.
And make it clear who does what.
That's true.
I think as long as it's clear,
That's
it's
true.
fine. If at the end of the day, I want to do the majority of the cooking and cleaning, and that's the thing that I'm great at, and it's the thing that gives me joy, and I feel like I'm contributing, then I don't feel like I'm confined to certain gender roles. I just feel like that was my choice. That's what I want to do. And I think as long as it's your choice, it makes sense for your relationship, and you've clearly discussed who does what, so that you both feel valued, and you don't feel like one is carrying the load more than the other at times, then it's fine.
But do you think it's fair that a lot of guys, so this is assuming that you in a happy marriage and relationship, but what about the woman who is single or who has, maybe like a single mom, and guys not necessarily seeing, like, she didn't have those qualities? It goes back to that video we were watching where they were talking about, like if you not cooking or if you not cleaning and blah, 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 like, I ain't even trying to talk to you type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that...
What ratchet platform are you watching these videos?
You know what I'm talking about. Please.
Yeah.
Your favorite football player.
I don't watch football, so I don't know who it is.
Remember when the Carolina Panther football player?
Oh,
that's what yeah. Well, don't. I mean, we ain't got to call him a moron. This might hit the thing. So.
I don't. It doesn't. I would like him to know I think he's a moron. I don't care.
But that's what I was referring to.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Kind of like continuing that conversation around single moms and like what. By the way, there's single dads out there struggling too.
Oh,
like
for
you know what I mean? Like
for
it's not just a single mom.
But I don't think. But I don't think a dad is going to get the same scrutiny. If a dad is working and then he also take care of his kids, that's going to be like uplifted. They're going to be like, oh, not only is he doing enough to provide for his kids, but he's also making sure they, bathe, right? They clean and making sure that, their hair is done. Like, that's all pluses. Whereas a woman, it's like,
what's wrong with her? Why is
you
she
should be doing that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, and this goes back to that talk about the whole myth about the boss B word. You know what I'm saying? So,
and what it takes to be a boss.
Right.
I think stories like this, people in high profile positions who make statements like that football player made, is very detrimental, not to us fully functioning people who have a brain, but I think about our children whose brains are still being molded. Yeah. That is what concerns me about what they say and what they spew. Otherwise, I ignore and I shut most of that stuff down, and I shut it out. I shut it down if it comes in my world. I shut it out from even getting that far for the most part. But I'm more concerned about kids who are more impressionable, really.
Yeah. And I think, I'm not one to like be getting on a platform, but I think it's important, especially for our kids, for you to document how you feel about that, right? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, there's so much influence, right? There's so much content out there that at least when you get older or they get older, they can always go back and get it straight from your mouth based off of either what you've posted on social media or what you've recorded or even what you tell them.
Yeah,
right?
And just being conscious that consumption of videos and what you see on social media is the same for your psyche and for your soul as food is to your body.
Yeah,
like you wouldn't just go drinking arsenic every single day, would you? No, because that has immediate detrimental effects to your body. I think people need to take the same level of seriousness when it comes to what you consume on social media, when it comes to what you consume on whatever the platform. It's really important.
And I think that brings it to, I think my last point, which is one of the biggest money myths, is listening to everybody on social media about how to make $1.
I'll say it a different way. The biggest myth I've heard is get as much information as possible. All information is good information for you to help determine what's best for you. All information is not good information.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Woo.
I agree. Well, and I think part of it too is like when you see a lot of people on social media and they might have, had a quick win, or they may have been able to gain that look like they are wealthy,
Some of them
or
don't.
that
They just projecting something.
Well, that's true too.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I was listening to I think it was a podcast the other day, and they were like, you got to show me like a history of wins. You can't have one win and be like, oh, this is my repeatable process. Mm-hmm. Like it's not stood the test of time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I need to see you produce over and over and over. Then I can believe you. But I think it's so easy to get on a platform these days and say, oh, I made $10,000 just by doing this one quick trick. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that them selling you, or not selling you, but them providing you that information, that's really not for you. That's for them, because they're trying to get their views up, because that's how they get compensated, right?
Right.
So I think a lot of times it's really easy, especially when it comes to like the multi-level marketing or even investing, to find people who say, this is the quick way to get to this path, where in reality, which is kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about how long we've done what we've done.
And documenting.
We've documented internally, but like this just didn't happen yesterday.
That's right.
Like all the investing that we did since 2008, well, that was probably when I met you. But then when I met you in 2010, and we started putting things together and started lining stuff up, and I mean, that's almost 10 years of doing what I think is the right thing over and over and over again.
And making tweaks and changes along the way. I think that's what, sometimes it bugs me a little bit when people say, oh, y'all are a fin couple. That's like the term they use. It's a term they use, like especially on IG, you're a fin handle, which means you talk about personal finance. Like your whole shtick is personal finance. And I try to stay away from stuff like that, because a lot of the fin handles are about like, top 5 things you should do to get wealthy. How to get debt free by tomorrow. Like just things like that. And I was like, I don't want to represent us as a fin couple. I want to represent us as a couple that lives, breathes, growth, progression, support for our children.
Yeah.
Like I want to represent who we are as a couple that's really striving to build wealth
and
for our
legacy.
Family and leave a legacy, and continue to not even just for our family, but grow that out. So like our little micro community that we have, if we can say we impacted it in a positive way, I'm satisfied with that.
For sure.
And that the whole platform has been about telling stories of other couples, not similar to us necessarily.
That's true.
Not all about the wins, but it's just really been about tell us your journey, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Because people need to hear both sides.
Absolutely.
People need to understand that.
Absolutely.
So I think myths are created for a couple reasons. One, they're created by a higher power who, and by I don't mean God, but like
I was about to say,
whoever the majority is in the world, to kind of keep you in this box.
That's true.
So you got to be very careful about how this myth was created. And myths can be beneficial for a certain snapshot in your life, especially when it comes to financial myths.
Okay.
Maybe it makes sense for one part in your life when you're at a state where of growth and grind, and then after you get to the next stage of now, the seeds are sprouting. Now you get to enjoy it, but it can proliferate even more.
Yeah.
Maybe that looks different, and that what worked for you before may not work for you right now.
That's right.
So I'd be careful about what you hear and what you consume, because it could really derail whatever progress that you're making from a financial standpoint. Just be careful. Just be aware of where the information is coming from, because that helps you determine.
Well, not only derail your progress, but even if you're just getting started, because there's a ton of people who, I mean, they're looking for
direction.
Yeah, direction, where to even start. If you start down the wrong path, to have to backtrack and then go the right path,
hurts so much in the beginning.
you may not even have enough time to recover.
That's right. That's right.